Hey, are you a sweaty little nerd who frequents Etris with their 9-man guild in an attempt to locate the nearest freshie so that you can beat him senseless, parade him around town on your back, and then fight your friends over who gets to Reaper Bell him, and then have the audacity to say GG easy as you watch the life slip away from his poor naked body? Then this video isn't for you. It's for the freshie. What's up YouTube? I'm WTF Nick Hacks, and today we'll be taking a deep dive into Deepwoken's combat system. The first thing I'd like to discuss is the UI and what each meter does. Starting with the 5 meters in the bottom middle of your screen. The top meter is posture. Posture builds up as you block attacks. If this meter reaches max, you will be block broken. This will allow the enemy to follow up with an attack to punish you. Posture will passively reduce at an extremely slow rate. The best way to reduce your posture is by simply parrying attacks. The next meter is health, and after that is your armor. This is not to be confused with equipment such as the items that you find in your journey and put right onto your character. Armor can only be crafted and obtained at a blacksmith. Different armors can have different buffs that they provide, and each armor set provides a certain amount of damage reduction. Your armor is active up until this meter hits 0. This means if your armor gives you 20% damage reduction, you will get the full 20% up until your armor actually breaks. Armor can be repaired at a blacksmith or with certain talents that you may pick up throughout your journey. The 4 circles you see here are cooldown timers. The first one is your roll cooldown. The second is your parry cooldown. The third is your feint cooldown, and the fourth is potion cooldowns. The next meter is your ether. This is the resource required to cast your mantras. This will regenerate passively, and there are talents and armor that increase regeneration and give you ether back on successful melee attacks. The final meter was just recently changed. It used to be reservoir, which was an ether reserve that would regenerate your ether faster when filled. This has been reworked with the new tempo system. Tempo is a resource rewarded to aggressive players. When you start a fight, your tempo bar will fill to around 75%. As you attack, you'll build up tempo. When this meter reaches a certain threshold, you can hit your G key to vent. Venting is a way to stop yourself from getting infinitely wall comboed by that 9-man guild that wants to skin you alive. When activated, it will knock back anyone around you, granting you a chance to retaliate or run from a fight. This was probably one of the better changes in verse 2, but in my opinion, it still needs a bit of work. The meters on the bottom left of your screen, from right to left, are blood, thirst, and hunger. Alright, so now let's go over some of the keybinds that you'll be using to fight off that pesky guild of max level players trying to bend your power 3 booty over a barrel and make you bark. Deepwoken is a glorified rhythm game. If you can get your timing and rhythm down, you'll be a lot more confident in fights against both monsters and players. Your M1 is your basic swing. Your M2 is your feint button. Holding F will block, and tapping F at the start of your opponent's attack animation will parry. Pressing Q will cause your character to roll, which gives you a brief moment of iframes against your opponent's attack. You can cancel your roll early by pressing the feint button. Control is your crouch button, and if pressed while running, it will cause you to slide. Pressing jump after you start your slide is always a good idea to cover the most distance possible. Each weapon class provides a varying range of attack speeds, with heavy typically being the slowest, light being the fastest, and medium being somewhere in between. Each weapon has its own specific swing speed that can be viewed by hovering over your weapon with your mouse. I'd like to talk about attack priority now. Attack priority dictates whose turn it is to attack. If this priority isn't followed, you are likely to get punished for it. For argument's sake, let's say I'm fighting someone with the exact same weapon as me. If I block or parry their attack, I now have turn priority. What this means is, if my opponent and I were to both swing at the same time after I gain priority from a block or parry, then my attack would land before theirs and completely cancel theirs out. You'll notice this the most against a blocking bandit that you're spamming M1 against. You may land a hit or two, but the moment they block or parry your attack, your first reaction needs to be to either block or parry their next attack because they have just gained their turn priority. Now, this gets a bit deeper when you put, let's say, a light weapon versus a heavy weapon. Priority becomes a little tricky to keep track of in this instance because even if you block your opponent's light weapon attack, their weapon is likely fast enough to follow up with another M1 before you can even manage to get a swing of your heavy weapon off. Keep this in mind when fighting someone. Gaining distance with a roll or event can give you the upper hand in gaining your turn priority back. Creating gaps and closing gaps are extremely important, especially in PvP. In Deepwoken, the aggressor is usually awarded. If you're getting pressured by a lot of your opponent's moves, then try to create a gap so that you can reassess the situation. Alternatively, if you're the aggressor and a gap is suddenly created, whether it's from you knocking your opponent back or them running away, you should immediately be looking for a way to close the gap that was created so that you can continue your assault. There are numerous mantras in the game designed to do this, but you can also click your M1 attack while mid-air to do an air attack. This will lunge you forward with your weapon and potentially put your opponent right back into the thick of the fight that they so desperately tried to escape. I won't be covering any specific mantras or combos because there are quite a few that serve different purposes. What I will say is to experiment with your mantras and figure out what combos work best with the build that you've created. One thing I didn't mention was that you can feint your mantras as well by pressing both M1 and M2 at the same time during the startup animation of your mantra. This, like normal weapon feints, are great for mixing up your attacks and potentially putting your opponent on a parry cooldown that their butthole was not prepared for. A fitting punishment for missing a single parry. The last thing I wanted to mention for combat is your weapon-specific critical attack. Pressing R or middle mouse button will activate your critical. These are really good because they all require some sort of startup animation that when used in tandem with your M1 combo can throw your opponent's timing off and land a crushing blow to them. There are a lot of criticals in the game and they can serve different purposes. For example, blunt weapons usually immediately block break your opponent regardless of how much posture they have. If you've made it this far, then I seriously appreciate your support. Honestly guys, I did not expect my last video to hit over 130,000 views. It made me super happy and I'm extremely excited to continue creating content on one of my favorite games ever. We are on the road to 5,000 subscribers, so please, subscribe, like, hit the bell notification for more content.